Every so often, there's a mass shooting, and when these mass shootings take place, all of the usual galaxy brains pop up in order to tell us that we need to have some sort of national conversation about guns and common sense gun control. The problem with this is I have studied mass shootings extensively and can say with evidence, which I will now present here in about 10 minutes time, that the entire gun issue is a red herring. This is not going to be a general argument either for or against gun control. If you think gun control is a great idea and you want to try it and you want to vote in favor of it, go ahead, be my guest. The point of this video is to simply point out the fact that guns are not the cause of these mass shootings. The prevalence of guns in America is not the reason behind the rise of these mass shootings, and gun control laws will probably make no difference whatsoever. In fact, it is a red herring to the point that anyone at this point, given what we know, anyone who comes out and says that the issue is guns in America and that we need gun control to stop these mass shootings, that person is wasting your time and doesn't know what they're talking about. They are completely wrong, and I will demonstrate it in 3 simple steps. Step 1. The reason that guns have nothing to do with the new and modern prevalence of mass shootings, which began in the 1990s. First of all, you have to establish what is a mass shooting. When various clickbait websites try to tell you that there have been hundreds or even thousands of mass shootings per year in the United States, they are using a definition of mass shooting that is as generous as possible in order to produce a large number. For example, they'll use a statistic of any shooting in which at least 4 people were injured or hit by a bullet in some way counts as a mass shooting, even if no one was killed, and even if the shooting simply happened during the course of a drive-by gangland style incident or bank robbery or even a police-involved shooting or something like that. The problem is, if you take all of those so-called mass shooters and put them into a graphic, you get a visual that looks something like this. This is not what we're talking about, and this is not what most people are thinking of when they think of a mass shooter. And these are not the types of mass shootings that are becoming more common. In fact, general gun crime in the United States has gone down for decades and has been going down. When we say mass shootings and we talk about the types of incidents that are actually rising in frequency, we are talking about the typical sort of stereotype of a horrific mass shooting. A person, usually a lone gunman, typically a white male, who goes to a place that is highly crowded, such as a shopping center, a school, or a concert, and takes aim indiscriminately, killing innocent people in large numbers. These types of shootings, although still incredibly rare, and you are certainly not likely to die from one, are in fact going up in frequency. And I think we can honestly say that there is a big problem where these mass shootings are happening now, and they didn't used to happen in past decades, at least not before the 1990s. But these types of mass shootings are quite rare. When you look at overall gun crime, it's gone down. And that is my first point. There is no correlation between gun ownership in the United States and general gun crime. If you take general gun crime and violence that is taking place in America, and you juxtapose the rates of gun crime with the rates of gun ownership in America, you see no correlation. In fact, you see an opposite correlation. As more and more Americans owned guns, and as America became flooded with an epidemic of more and more firearms and more people owning firearms, violent crime went down at the same time. There simply is no correlation between gun ownership and violent crime. If the prevalence of guns in America was the cause of mass shootings, if somehow simply having guns around caused people to want to kill indiscriminately with them, then you would see a rise in all sorts of gun crime in association with the increased number of guns. The reason you don't see that is obvious. The kind of people who are buying all these guns are usually hunters gun collectors, gun enthusiasts, NRA members, and people who buy the weapons for self-defense in their homes. And generally speaking, these are the most peaceful and law-abiding types of people in America. They are not criminals. These are good salt-of-the-earth type people, even if you do not share their sort of lifestyle and their outdoorsy ways, and even if you, like me, do not hunt and have practically never touched a gun, the fact still remains. These guys are not the bad guys. The NRA are not the bad guys. Frankly, if a mass shooting were to go down, I would want to be standing next to an NRA member. So that is point number one. There simply is no correlation between gun ownership and gun violence. Redneck gun owners are generally not mass shooters. In fact, the mass shooter personality profile is very, very different from that of your average Second Amendment Bible-thumping country type person. I'm going to do a separate video someday about the actual personalities and personality types of mass shooters, but I'm not looking forward to it because it's a really, really creepy topic and my soul is going to feel dirty for weeks afterwards, but that will be in another video. Point number 2. The epidemic of mass shootings started in the 1990s and has more or less continued to this day. However, before that time, mass shootings were very, very rare, and the farther back you go, there were fewer mass shootings and fewer gun control laws. If you go back all the way to the 1920s and 30s, school shootings were unimaginable. They were unheard of. And yet, at the same time, everybody had guns. Kids took shotguns to school. They kept them in the back of their cars and trucks when they went to school so that after school they could immediately go out and go hunting. It was easy for even a 12-year-old or a child to order a Tommy gun, which is an actual machine gun through the mail, no background checks, no age checks, no questions asked. It is abundantly clear that the presence of guns, even fully automatic machine guns, did not cause people to decide to commit mass shootings or school shootings, which were so few and far between that there are only a handful of them that you can really compare to modern school shootings, going all the way back to the beginning of the 1900s up until the 1990s. Guns were abundant, they were easy to get, they were accessible to teenagers, and yet nobody ever thought, I'm going to take a gun to school and mow down my classmates. It's simply not something that was considered. And finally, the mass murders committed by mass shooters are simply the types of crimes that would not have been prevented by proposed new gun control laws. This is more or less an established fact. When politician Marco Rubio suggested that new gun control laws would not solve this crisis, his statement was fact-checked by the Washington Post's fact-checker, Glenn Kessler, who determined that Rubio's statement was actually true. None of the recent mass shootings that have occurred would have been stopped by these proposed gun control laws. And these mass shootings are a new phenomenon. As the National Review reported, 15 of the 20 worst mass shootings in United States history have occurred since the Columbine school shooting in 1999. At the time of this video, that's about a 20-year period. Think about that. America, well over 200 years old, but in the past 20 years, we've seen all these mass shootings take place. 15 of the 20 top mass shootings in American history, despite the fact that we live in an era where guns and gun use is more restricted than ever. The fact is, the reason that these perpetrators would not be stopped by gun control laws is that mass shootings are highly premeditated. A mass shooter typically plans his crime for months or even years before actually going through with it. And during that time, can take any sort of steps necessary to be able to acquire the weapons to commit this mass shooting. In other words, if there are gun laws in place, mass shooters will find a way to get around them. If gun control laws work at all, they work against crimes of passion. They work to stop people who rush out to commit a crime without careful planning. People who carefully plan to commit crimes are going to break laws if necessary in order to get the weapons that they need to commit these crimes. If they have to get them illegally from across the border or from an illegal arms dealer, they will do it. It's not a problem because they're already planning mass murder and in most cases suicide. They know they're going to die or at least spend life in prison. Breaking a gun law is not going to be a moral barrier that they won't cross. So that completes this video, which I think makes an airtight argument that guns are simply a red herring. If you want to try to understand why we're having these mass shootings, even though overall gun crime has gone down, we need to look at what is actually causing the uptick in mass shootings. We know it's not guns, so we can drop that argument and we can try to focus on what it actually is. Hey, if you think I'm making a bad argument, or you think there's any sort of logical gaps in what I'm saying, use the comment sections to bring those to light or to share any other relevant information. Peace.